Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 373 of A Yank on the Footy. I'm Craig Wessels, coming to you from Sandusky, Ohio. Thanks for checking out this episode. This is the 13th of my previews for 2025, and in just a moment, I'm going to be joined by Jonathan Walsh from the Don the Stat podcast, and we're going to be talking all things Essendon for 2025. And Jonathan is a fantastic guest. I had him on previously, just a wonderful guy, a passionate Bomber supporter. Now, folks, don't forget that you can find everything over at my website at ayankonthefooty.com. And if you'd like to subscribe there, you certainly can, so that when new episodes come out, they'll be in your inbox within about 20 minutes of when the episode is released. And also, if you enjoy the show, I do hope you'll share it with your friends and family, and I hope you'll consider also leaving a review over there on my website as well. And follow me on my socials. There's links there as well. If you'd like to reach out to me, you can do that at Yank_on Twitter, or Yank on the Footy podcast on Facebook, and Yank on the Footy on Instagram, or by email at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com if you'd like to talk to me there. And if you've got an idea for a great guest, maybe it's you, maybe you've got a great story to tell, come for the footy, stay for the life of that supporter and that fan of the game. I'd love to have the opportunity to chat with you. So please reach out and consider doing so. And without any further ado, let's go ahead and jump into my chat with Jonathan Walsh. All right, ladies and gentlemen, we are back for, I believe it is our 13th or 14th preview episode. It's the 13th for 2025. And I am absolutely thrilled to be joined again by Jonathan Walsh from the Don the Stat podcast. Jonathan, thanks for taking time out of your busy morning to sit down and chat with me, sir.
No, my absolute pleasure. Great to see you and great to talk footy with you.
Yeah, this is it's a pleasure to chat with you again. I mean, it's the right at the cusp of a new season where in a new fixture, um, and I this is the only time I'm going to mention it, but this is the point in time where Essendon supporters are going, this is the year, it's happening now. We know so fingers
Yeah,
crossed for you. Yeah,
I was in the
that's
gym this yeah, I was in the gym this morning and saying to someone this is the best time of the year to be an Essendon supporter because hope springs eternal and games
there you
haven't
go.
started yet and yeah, and then that hope can sadly has disappeared relatively quickly the last couple of years. But yeah, new year, let's see what it brings. I'm looking forward to it.
Well, you've got some significant changes that have happened with your club from last year to this year. You know, Dyson Heppel, your captain, is has moved on, and he's playing for, I think, for Port Melbourne now, I believe, is he not in the
Yeah,
VFL?
that's correct.
Yeah.
Yep, that's right.
Um, Jake Stringer, we'll talk a little bit more about him, has moved on as well, and it's you kind of have to have, I would imagine, slightly mixed feelings about, okay, we're struggling to, we're struggling to find our way, and we just basically set free our leading goal scorer. Uh, how do we go about replacing that? But he is and has been a bit of an enigma, though. Would you say?
Yeah, he has. He had a good year in terms of goal output last year, didn't he? Kicked 40 or so goals, but
Hmm.
he hasn't kicked 40 goals 2 seasons in a row at Essendon, and I don't think he's done it since his very early years at the Bulldogs. Most people would know he's had a bit of a history with injury and lack of fitness and conditioning and consistency throughout his career. So he may very well go and do that again for the Giants this year, first year at a new club, and he's got a point to prove. But I'm not necessarily convinced we would have got that from him at Essendon. And I think it's the right move for player and coach.
Yeah, yeah. It's how how I guess we'll get the other elephant out of the room here. Is Brad Scott's seat going to be warm at all this year? Do you think?
No, I don't think so. I think there'll be a lot of noise, but look, there's a lot of elements to having the right coach, and
Yeah.
Brad Scott may not necessarily be the best tactical coach in the AFL, but I do think what he is the person that Essendon really needs to be able to withstand all of that noise and pressure that comes.
Yeah.
We haven't had success in a really really long time, and everyone knows that. And there's just lots of lots of reminders on social media for every Essendon supporter about it. But I think we've been a victim of overstating where our list was at several times in the past to our own detriment. And what I really like about not just Brad Scott, but also our president in Dave Barham and our CEO in Craig Vozzo. And Craig's someone who's had a lot of experience at successful clubs, mainly West Coast, of course, during their successful era, is that they're prepared to do this the right way, methodically, and not take shortcuts. And I think moving on, Jake Stringer is a good example of that. He's arguably worth a win or two to us this year.
Hmm.
But the opportunity to move him on, reset, or continue to build our professionalism and standards and get some games into younger players as a consequence. We've just drafted Isaac Kako, for example, small forward. Yeah, to bring those kinds in, I think is a bit of a sign that there's a united club and that Brad Scott has the backing of the key stakeholders at the club.
And how excited are you about this young man who, from what I have read, is a lifelong Bombers supporter coming into your side?
Yeah, I am excited. I'm excited for his football ability. I think
Mhm.
everyone who follows the draft would have seen his ability to be creative and kick goals and dance and dodge and weave a tackle and the like. What I'm probably more excited about is that he's seemingly added some defensive elements to his game, which maybe weren't there in the under
Okay.
18s and arguably don't need to be all that much when you're as good as him winning the footy at that level. So he's added that. And talking to a couple of people around the club in the last couple of weeks, the point that stuck with me was that someone shared that he's got a perfect combination of confidence and humility, which I think
Ooh,
sets him up. He knows he's good, but he knows he has to continue to work, and he's still doing all the things that made him, well, got him on an AFL list in terms of his training and commitment, but also going out and doing clinics and giving back to the his own community and the Essendon community as well already. I
right.
think is a really good sign of a young man who's got his head switched on.
I mean, that's a great statement to make, to say that somebody has the right balance of those two things, because I think to perform, and again, what do I actually know about this, but I would imagine to perform at the highest level of any sport, you have to have a significant amount of confidence. But you can't afford to be overconfident, because then it starts to borderline on being cocky, or you just come off being a jerk. But I love the fact that that was mentioned, that he has the humility and the humbleness that goes along with that, to be able to say, what, I think I'm pretty good, but I could be better, and there, I certainly have room for improvement. Again, he hasn't played his first official game yet, so let's not, we don't want to heap too much pressure on him and upset that balance at all either, because you don't want him to become too humble to where he starts to temper his output, which maybe makes him less effective, and it's less of what the club saw in him when they decided to draft him.
Yeah, that's exactly right. And as a first year player, he'll have patches where he's not able to find the footy and not able to get himself into the game, and that's natural for a when he just turned 19, I think. So yeah, so that's going to happen, and he'll need to work through that. But then yeah, I think if you and I don't mean to compare him to the all-time greats of sport, but you think of anyone, whether it's Muhammad Ali or those types, they
Hmm.
they had a level of confidence that probably bordered on arrogance at times, but that came from knowing that they'd done the work and put the effort in to be the best of what they did. So yeah, where that confidence and humility intersects, I think is a really good attribute in an athlete.
And your list has really begun to get churned and turned over quite a bit in these last couple of years. And I just was kind of doing the math here, that you have basically almost a quarter of your list. You got 40 or 11 players on your list that have 0 games at the AFL level as of this point in time, and another, four that have less than 20 games. And a couple of those are people who you're going to be counting on tremendously this year. And I've been doing some reading on Code Sports, that they're thinking, that Nate Caddy may be that person that's going to step into maybe the role that Jake Stringer had been playing. But it's just, you got really young. You've only got a couple guys. You got one guy that's actually right now over 30, and that's Todd Goldstein. And you know, depending upon the day, Todd Goldstein almost looks like he's 45 sometimes. But I mean, he doesn't play like that, of course. But he's also not going to be, I don't think, dependent upon being that ruckman for 23 games either, because you've got a youngster that I think is
Yeah,
ready to
Nick
blossom.
Bryan and Sam Draper are the two, yeah, that would lead our sort of our ruck line. So yeah, that's right. I think the hope would be that Todd Goldstein doesn't actually play a game at all this year. He really is the break glass in case of emergency.
Yeah.
Both Draper and Nick Bryan have by all reports had really strong pre-seasons, and I think this could be the making of Sam Draper this year. He's a free agent, free agent at the end of the year. He's got strong links to South Australia, so whether he stays or goes, I think is almost secondary right now to the fact that if he wants to maximize his free agency contract, he's going to need to really put in and have a massive year. And having a young ruckman in the likes of Nick Bryan coming through to keep Sam really honest and have
Yeah.
to push him really hard, I think is a really good position to be in that regard. Not too many clubs do have two genuine number one rucks on their list. So I think if they both develop, we've got an opportunity there. And you're right, it is a young list by virtue of the changes we've made. I think the only other 30-year-old would be Dylan Shield, who has moved to the halfback flank through the preseason and looks set to add a little bit of experience to that part of the ground, given, as you mentioned at the start, we've lost Dyson Heppel and
Yeah.
Jake Kelly through retirement. So yeah, it's likely that throughout the majority of 2025, we'll only have one 30-year-old playing in our side and a lot of young guys. But we've also got a core, I think, of 22 to 24-year-olds who have now played 50, 60, 70, 80 games by
Hmm.
virtue of the games that I guess Ben Rutten initially and then Brad Scott over the last 2 years invested into them, who we would be hoping can show a level of improvement in their consistency and of performances. So, guys like, Caldwell and Perkins and, Xavier Dersma, who's in his second year at the club, Ben Mackay, who played his first full season in the AFL system last year. Nick Martin, he's only a third-year player, but each year he's gone to another level, which is really exciting. And yeah, Jones and Hobbs and these types. So yeah, I think it's probably that group that have played 50 to 80 or so games now that we're hoping would really take the next step to help us find the level of consistency that maybe dropped off in the second half of last year.
Do you think they'll be able to play Nick Bryan and Sam Draper at the same time and maybe slide Draper forward a little bit more as well then?
Yeah, preseason match sim indicates that's what they're going to look to do. I don't know if they'll necessarily play two ruckmen every week
Uh-huh.
because Peter Wright's the other variable
That's
in
true,
there.
yes.
Yeah, who's certainly a very capable second ruck when he's up against other similar styles to him.
Hmm.
He's not a number one ruckman by any stretch, but if he's going up against we played Gold Coast in the first game, so if it was someone like Jed Walter or Himmelberg or the like, he's going to be more than capable of putting in a good shift against them. So I don't know if we'll see all three of them in the same team too often, but I
Okay.
think at any one point in time, it's going to be a combination of those two. And when we do go with the two rucks, it'll be Draper, the one that spends more time forward than Nick Bryan.
Okay. Um, so looking at at the list, who do you see? You've got some openings that have come in. We talked a little bit about Jake Stringer. Who's stepping into Heppel's spot and going to be filling that role that he has been playing.
Yeah, I think we've got a couple of options there, which we probably didn't have on our list 12 months ago, sort of ready to go and step up. So we recruited Jackson Pryor as a delisted free agent from the Brisbane Lions. He spent
Hmm.
4 or 5 years on their list, and being a halfback slash wing, there was a lot of competition for spots in that part of the ground at the Lions, but he's um, he's got some similar attributes to Dyson in that he's similar height. He can play a little bit taller. He's good overhead. But what he is a really, really good kick of the footy. He's got a booming left foot that I think we've lacked for foot skills in that part of the ground. So he's an option. He'd be 22, 23, I think, this year. Played 30 or 40 games at the Lions and obviously comes from They made two grand finals, won a flag in that, and I think made the finals every year that he was on the list. So he knows what it takes. Archie Roberts played 4 games last year. Again, a similar type. In fact, they've given Archie Dyson Heppel's number 21, which I think is a bit of a nod to what they see in him. And again, he's one that can play on the wing and play half back as well, and another one who's got good foot skills. And then we took Saad Al Houli in the mid-season draft last year, who's a bit of a different type. He's a bit like his namesake in Adam Saad at the team whose name I don't like to mention at the Blues. But probably a bit more of a winger than a halfback. But again, he can slot into that role that Heppel and Kelly were playing as well. So yeah, I think it'll be a real investment in some younger players in that part of the ground.
Yeah, and I think this is again one of those things that it's going to hopefully bode well as you look into 2026 and that sort of thing. Now, that's not to say that this club cannot have success, because you've got some really solid veterans on your list that have played well, have played meaningful games. But when you're bringing along a lot of youngsters like that, it may take there may be some instances where you kind of take your lumps a little bit before they gain their traction and start playing with the confidence and humility, if you will, again, that that you mentioned before. So I mean, it's got to be an exciting time, but at the same time you're kind of thinking, okay, can we, these youngsters, can we get 10 games in them? Can we get 20 games into them and just see where we are? But it's one of those things where you have to bake the cake first. You can't take it out of the oven having it, baked before you even put it in yet. So we got to go through the whole process of mixing it up.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, I think we're the fourth youngest list in terms of average age in the competition as it stands at the moment. I know not every club has filled their final list spots just yet, but we're the 11th in terms of average games. So our experience is a little bit better than our level of experience is certainly a little bit better than our age by virtue of the games that we've put into some younger players. And I think what changes for us this year is some of the underlying levels of improvement were there for us last year. We were the number 4 team in the competition for getting the ball inside 50. We weren't able to then score. I think we were the 13th ranked team for scores for. So, that was an improvement at least an improvement on the year before, where we were the 15th ranked team for inside 50s, and then we were 7th best for opposition inside 50s, whereas we were also 15th in that metric. So that took us from having the 3rd worst inside 50 differential last year, in 2023, to the 5th best in 2024. And that shows a sign of an improvement of getting the game on your terms in terms of playing it in your forward half, and some of the defensive mechanisms working well. But we weren't always able to convert that, and often we weren't able to convert that. We lost a lot of games last year where we had more inside 50s than our opposition, and I think a lot of that was just due to the speed at which we moved the ball, and that gave the opposition an opportunity to set up and get numbers behind, and ultimately rebound and move the ball into a sort of pretty open forward line. And as great servants as Dyson Heppel and Jake Kelly they were pretty slow by foot, both in terms of leg speed and the way that they move the footy.
Right.
Whereas these young guys that we're bringing in are kind of the opposite. Yeah, obviously they're raw and they don't have that experience, but they've got leg speed. They move the ball really well. They kick it really well. And that sort of Kelly Heppel problem was compounded by the fact that you then got Ben Mackay and Jordan Ridley and these big key position defenders who aren't necessarily good by foot either. So you've got 4 or 5 guys who move the ball slowly, versus I think what will this year be 4 or 5 guys added with McGrath and Redmond, who are already there, and Shield, who likes to take the game on, and Zach Reed as well, that young sort of key position defender who's a really good kick, comes into the mix too. So I think it'll just be a different look in terms of how we move the ball this year, because of the capabilities we've added to that part of the ground that just weren't there in 2024.
Did the club kind of run out of petrol towards the end of the season? I mean, the second half of the season, because I mean they dropped 9 out of 12. They dropped at the end of the season. Now, granted, two of those were by a combined 3 points, so we're not talking massive margins there. But it just it had to be frustrating when you were where you were on the ladder, and then you're just watching the snake just sliding down and down. It had to be a frustrating thing for you because you knew we've got some talent here, but it's just kind of falling apart right at this moment in time.
Yeah, I don't know if we completely ran out of petrol. I just don't think
Okay.
we probably had some luck early in the year where we won some games where opposition the opposition maybe didn't kick as accurately as we did, and I think that reversed in the second half of the year. Our accuracy and X score, as people like to call it, dropped off, and we weren't making the most of our opportunities. I think teams started to work us out a little bit, get numbers behind the ball, but we were competitive in most games. If we go back to I think our first game over the bye was a relative after the bye was a relatively comfortable win against the Eagles. We were competitive until about halfway through the third quarter against your team, the Cats, and there were a couple of free kicks that went or umpiring decisions that went against us, and we let that affect us, which was disappointing. So not blaming the umpires on that one, blaming our own players for how they reacted. But we were certainly in that game for a long part. We should have beaten Melbourne with the amount of ball we had in our forward half. We
Yeah.
should have beaten Adelaide. We lost by a couple of points. We had a really bad game against St Kilda where we lost by the best part of 10 goals. But
Yep.
most teams had them last year, didn't they? Even Sydney made a grand final and lost a game by 100 points.
Yeah.
Brisbane
Yeah.
got touched up a couple of times early in the year. Um, Fremantle were playing for a position in the top eight, and we were able to run that game out. We came from behind in that game. What was it, the fourth last game of the season, I think.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
um, Gold Coast, it took till after the siren to beat us. And again, we had plenty of ball inside 50 and should have done better. And then, yeah, look, the Swans were, by that's, but we're too good and ran the game out. And then, yeah, the last game against the Lions, we didn't really have anything to play for. So I think you can almost just put a line through that game and pretend it didn't happen. But yeah, finished off the season against the grand finalists, didn't we? So
Well, yeah.
you'd
Yeah. The
expect to
last two
drop those
games,
two.
yeah, you you had no, I did you no favors there at the end of your fixture last year. But yeah, I who are you the most excited about this year? I mean, what player or two players, if you will, are the ones that you cannot wait to see them either on the side for the first time or them in their new role, and you're just, can it get to the first week of March already?
Yeah, there's probably three or four actually. It's a little bit hard to for different reasons. So yeah, I'm obviously excited to see how Kako adapts to senior footy. And that first draft pick, and we've been crying out for a dangerous small forward for a long time. So I'm excited to see what he can add, and then team up with Nate Caddy, who's had a really good preseason. So we sort of get our two first round draft picks who have played footy together. They both come from the same school. So they know each other well. So I'm looking forward to seeing how that relationship blossoms.
Okay.
I'm looking forward to seeing Elijah Sardis, our first pick from the year before. He's had a great preseason. He's been playing exclusively in the midfield in match sim. He's improved his foot skills. He's got stronger and bigger. I think he's ready to go and really start to cement himself and show why the club took him at pick five. Um, and then, yeah, I think Archie Perkins will be the biggest benefit of Jake Stringer moving on. He's played 80 games now, so it's not necessarily make or break for Archie this year, but it's an opportunity for him to really take the opportunity in front of him and cement himself and probably show how good he is and can be. I think that confidence and humility discussion that we had earlier, I think he's one that suffers from maybe being a little bit too humble and lacking confidence at times. So yeah, I'm excited to see him and Nick Martin. Anyone who listens to Don the Start will know that he's a player that I just adore watching. He'll move
Yeah.
into the midfield on a bit more of a permanent basis this season. So I'm excited to see what he can do there.
Is there anybody that you thought that maybe my guess this is a two-parter that the club should have kept on the list that they didn't. And is there anybody that you thought, how did this guy get a spot on the list again this year?
Yeah, not necessarily. No, definitely not anyone that we didn't keep that I thought we should. I think, yeah, that there's no one that was delisted that I'm necessarily upset about. And I
Yeah.
I did support the Stringer move. I felt our forward line was way too congested with what we had, and someone had to move out. And he, whether it was him or someone else at the time, it didn't matter too much. But the more you think about it, the more I'm in support of that move. In terms of those that we kept on, I think not really. I think we probably I wouldn't have necessarily kept Todd Goldstein on it. It doesn't make a much sense to me to keep a guy on your list who's 36 and who you're literally hoping doesn't play a game for you.
Right, right,
We've got the two ruckmen we spoke about, and if we did get injuries, we've also got Vigo Vicentini, who
right,
is on our
right.
rookie list, who we draft. He's in his second year, who's a ruckman. You don't necessarily want to expose him to that just yet, but if needed, he's there. You've also got Peter Wright, who, if needed, could play in the ruck, and Nick Cox as well, who could also play in the ruck. Yeah, if really needed. And then we went and drafted Giron as well from WA, who's a ruck come forward. So we had some options that we didn't necessarily need to fill a list spot with Todd.
Yeah.
Um, and then maybe the other one who was probably a little bit lucky, not necessarily to stay on the list, but we gave 2 years to Matt Guelphy, who, is probably going to be a fringe player for us this year. He's actually sadly just done his hamstring and will be out for a couple of months. But yeah, with the introduction of Kako and the likes, I think that and Reece Unwin was a small forward we drafted as well. I think 2 years to maybe a fringe player is a little bit of a stretch, but yeah, that they were probably the two that stand out.
Is Goldstein there still this year? Do you think that maybe be kind of a foil during training for these young rucks to basically say, I've seen it all, and this year during training, I'm going to show you absolutely as much as I possibly can during this training. Okay, it's kind of like the sensei and the student, if you will, and this is kind of his opportunity to pass along that wisdom, rather than it necessarily being a coach saying it. It's somebody that's actually bumping into these guys during training and that sort of thing to show them, to continue to show them the ropes, to have them ready to step away and then phase him out after 2025.
Yeah, no doubt that's the thinking. Yeah, it's almost a playing coach, isn't it? You keep him
Yeah,
on the list, and he's out there competing. I went down to training on Saturday and took in Match Sim, I guess it makes sense for someone like Draper and Brian to be up rucking against Goldstein rather than an 18-year-old. But I guess my argument against that decision would be that Draper's now 26, Brian's now 23 or 24. Like at some point you have to take the training wheels off, and
good point.
no
Good
doubt
point.
that will happen next year. But
Yeah.
I probably would have just done it this year, and yeah, given them complete ownership over that ruck position. But yeah, I do get both sides of it.
Well, and I just this just popped into my head as I'm looking at this. Did the conversation when because a lot of people were very surprised when Goldstein left the Kangaroos to come to Essendon anyway. Do you think the conversation actually happened between the 23 and 24 seasons where they said, Todd, we'd like to have you here for a couple of years, and we're gonna keep you on the list that second year, regardless, to help just kind of put the finishing touches on these guys, and then, maybe you go into coaching or whatever the case may be, or hand modeling or whatever you're gonna do as a second career.
Yeah, look, I think ruck coaching was most likely part of the conversation. It was, yeah, come and play for a year or two and
Yeah,
then move into a coaching role. And I wonder whether we've kept him on the playing list this year because it meant that we could free up a little bit of our soft cap space in the coaching ranks to fill another role. So
well, that's a
that
good
might
point.
have
That's a
been,
great point.
yeah, that might have been part of it. I do know that before we recruited Todd, that there was a conversation with both Sam Draper and Nick Bryan, particularly Nick Bryan, on the reasons why, and what we wanted to do, and the benefits that Todd could have on both of those, but particularly young Nick, who was still quite raw at that stage, and from what I understand, Nick Bryan was really supportive of getting Todd to the club to help guide him and mentor him, even if it meant that he'd play fewer AFL games in
Yeah.
2024 as a result of it. So yeah, I'm sure that conversation happened, again with those two around what 2025 might look like.
And you may not know this, and this is just another one of those things that I'm kind of taking this, I'm peeling this onion back another layer. But if the thought was, dealing with the soft cap for the coaching cap and that sort of thing, um, if Goldstein is there as an unofficial player coach, if you will, um, is there anything that, when it comes to be game day, and I know a lot of time the players who are not selected, they're kind of sitting together up in the stands watching the game. But would it be against the league rules for Todd Goldstein to actually be sitting up in the coach's box and coaching from there since he's on the players list? I don't know if there's anything about that or not.
And unless it's changed, there's no rules against having him
Okay.
in the coach's box or the stats box, which is obviously next door to the
Yeah.
coaches. There are some rules around having him on the bench or the playing field that would need AFL permission, and you normally only see that when a player is injured and out
Hmm.
for an extended time,
Right.
and the clubs get AFL permission. So yeah, I wouldn't expect to see him out at the huddle at quarter and three-quarter time, but I would probably expect to see him in the box a fair bit, and maybe even popping down to the rooms at halftime too.
Okay. So looking at 2025, what are the markers that you're going to be looking for that are going to tell you that this season is going well? And what also are the ones that you're hoping not to see that are going to be an indicator that, okay, we've still got some serious work to do?
Yeah, I think that there's a couple for me. And look, I like to use statistical markers because that's my background,
Okay.
and the way that I not just stats on their own, but analysis. Um, I, we made those improvements to our game last year in terms of territory and winning inside 50s and stopping the opposition from getting in. We're also a lot better at intercepting and winning the ball back off the opposition. I think we were fourth in the AFL for intercept differential last year, and we're bottom four the year before. So those parts of our game worked really well. What didn't work was our ability to put the score on the board and capitalize on those opportunities. So I'm hoping or would like to see that we repeat those markers, but then we improve our inside 50 efficiency. So the percentage of times we score when we go inside, and then also the percentage of times that the opposition score when they go inside 50. And we were bottom four in both of those metrics. So if we can see some improvement there and not necessarily go from bottom four to top four, but if we can, get to the top eight within those metrics, then it's probably the difference between us winning 11 games as we did in 2024 and then going on to win, 12 or 13 games in 2025 and playing in a final. So I think that's where our improvement comes from. We've put some players in place to play some roles to improve those things with adding small
Hmm.
forwards, adding better users at halfback and on the wing. So yeah, they're the bits that I'll be tracking the closest this season.
Okay. So, so what are the things that you're really concerned about then, if you don't want to see happening, that you just are like, okay, this is maybe you don't even want to talk about these. I know nobody likes to talk about the I don't want to see that, but if it happens, I know that's not going to be good.
Yeah, I think a bit differently to a lot of other probably Essendon fans. I like the notion of putting ourselves in situations that are going to make our playing group feel vulnerable. So whether that's the situation we had in that Geelong game where things are going against us, and it's natural for players to maybe drop their heads. I want that situation to happen again, so we've got an opportunity to see, have we learned from it and do we get better from it. I want us to be in a position again like we were in 2024, where we're up at the pointy end of the ladder, at the halfway mark, and I
Hmm.
think most Essendon supporters will be going, "Oh no, here we go again. We're going to fall away and miss the finals." But I would much rather us be in that position and get an opportunity to prove that we're different and that we've improved, rather than in previous years prior to Brad Scott, where we've made the finals, but just scraped in at the end because we've won a couple of cheap games, towards the end of the season and fallen in.
Yeah.
So yeah, there's nothing that I'm overly nervous about seeing this year. I really want to see my football club put itself in those situations again, and see how we handle it.
So, and that's a great point about that. So would you rather see the club do 75% of the things that you want to see the club do to be successful and just miss out on finals, or do a lot of things wrong and somehow fall into the number 8 spot on the ladder?
Yeah, I think we've been there, done that in terms of the ladder,
Yeah.
and we did it in 2001. We made the finals. We finished eighth, lost to the Bulldogs down in Tassie in that second COVID interrupted season, and we really just made the finals off the back of Jake Stringer, who we've spoken a lot about.
Hmm.
Probably having his best season at Essendon, and we played some quite freewheeling football. Got on a bit of a roll at different times, and yeah, and then got shown up when the test really came, and then struggled to back up in 2022. I think doing it the right way, and playing a brand of football that is ultimately the one that's going to take you forward.
Yeah.
With good habits and good professionalism, when you've got a pretty young group, I think is much more important um, than yeah, sort of the way that we've done it in the past. So whilst my hope is that we improve enough this year to make the finals and show something, I would rather not make it doing it the right way than make it doing it the wrong way for
Okay.
sure.
Okay. That's I mean, and I don't think I've ever asked that question before. That just was kind of popping in my head as you were talking there. I thought that's not a bad one to ask. I may ask that one again to some other folks as well. And so, what is your bold prediction for both the club in 2025 and then for the league in general in 2025?
I think you did ask me this question last year, and I
Yep.
said that we
Yep.
would we would show a much more consistent level of football. So I think I probably got that one right last year, even though our wins and loss ratio didn't necessarily change. I my I don't know if it's a bold prediction or not, but for Essendon, I think at times in the first half of the year, it's going to look uglier than it did last year because of the way that we're going to look to move the ball a lot faster and efficient than we did last year. And I think that's a more mistake-prone style of football, and we're going to have to
Hmm.
learn how to defend that as well. So I think at times the style, not necessarily the results, are going to look quite ugly before it gets better. But I do think it will get better in the second half of the year as we get more games under our belt. And look how that looks in terms of the competition. I'm not sure. It's such an even comp, isn't it?
Yeah. Yeah.
It's not a bold prediction at all. But I think we're going to have a year that's much like 2024. That uh, there's probably only a couple of teams that you could sit here wholeheartedly right now and say, yeah, they're going to be really, really good again. And maybe a
Hmm.
couple that you can say, no, they're in for a long year for one reason or another.
Does that include
And
one you
then
did not want to mention earlier?
look, I think I have an ability to be much more objective about Essendon than I do about Carlton.
No,
My
I meant Richmond. I
Richmond,
thought you were talking
sorry.
about
Yeah,
Richmond
no,
before. I'm
no, no.
sorry.
I was
I apologize. I thought you when you
no, no.
said
That's
the
okay.
club I don't want to mention, I thought you were talking about the Tigers there.
No, no, no. That was Carlton. No, I think
Okay.
Richmond are going to have obviously a long year, aren't they? But they know why, and that's part of their
Yeah,
plan.
yeah,
So yeah, you can expect them, I guess, to be down the bottom, and West Coast have been hit by injuries that they can't afford to have
yeah.
to experience players. So it might be a little bit tough for them. And then yeah, I think Brisbane are going to be good again. I think Swans will be around the mark, and then I think the Giants should expect to improve, and then I think everyone else is probably playing for you know the remaining spots, and it's going to come down to
Hmm.
to keeping your list healthy and together, and probably a bit of luck along the way on who you play when and getting teams at the right time and the like as well. So yeah, no real bold predictions there. I think it's really just stating the obvious.
Speaking of who you play when, I have to ask the question. Do you have your tickets yet for round 22?
No, I don't. Well, I have I have I am an Essendon home and away member, so
Okay.
I do have and I've got reserve seats at both. So I guess the answer to that is yes.
Okay. So I know that there seems to be some individuals involved with the club that are not really thrilled about having to head down the M1 this year. That they think it's beneath them. But it's
I I like the challenge again,
yeah,
as I said before, to go down there and hostile environment. The more times you put yourself in that position, the better you are for it. I think where it and I think every team should play their home games at their home ground, and it's such a unique advantage for Geelong. I don't begrudge them for that, but
yeah.
I can understand why people might get upset that it feels like some other clubs don't have to endure that, and we do. The Pies haven't been down there for a while, have they?
Yeah, that's yeah. I if I'm not mistaken, if you're on the M1 heading south out of Melbourne, you do have to go past Werribee, if I'm not mistaken, correct?
You do, correct? Yeah.
Do you think any member of the do you think Scott Pendlebury's ever been through Werribee before?
No, I'm not sure. I'm not sure he's ever crossed the West Gate, to be honest.
Yeah, it's I just and I've been joking. I know you said you don't plan on watching the Super Bowl, but the I just looking in the Cats did get one extra game in Geelong this year, which was awesome for them. But you know, I'd been telling somebody said, that one of the two teams that's playing for the Philadelphia Eagles that has a young man from Australia playing on it.
Yep.
Um, that if they played in the league championship to go to the Super Bowl last week or the week before against a team from Washington D.C. And if the NFL had told the Eagles, well, yes, you have the home field, but Washington Stadium's bigger, so we're going to play your home game at their stadium. I said, well, if Philadelphia fans would have driven to Washington, D.C. and burned the stadium to the ground before they let them play a game there. It's just,
Yeah.
I mean, it's
Yeah.
one of those things that you just would, and again, I've developed an understanding and a little bit of an appreciation for it, but it's just still one of those things that's like, ouch, if that, and I guess that's maybe me as a Geelong supporter. If I was a Collingwood supporter, I would probably think, what's the big deal? But
Yeah.
so it's I do think it's awesome that a lot of clubs do get to play you know their games on their home deck, and again, you've got a lot of clubs that are sharing the same stadium. So I mean, it's so even it may not be a home game for them, they're still on their home deck. I mean, do they? And I guess I've never asked this either. Do you know? Does each club have their own changing rooms within the MCG? Does Essendon have their own, or do they all kind of share like just a handful of different changing rooms?
Yeah, no, there's two lots of change rooms, a home room and an away room.
Okay,
So yeah, you just
okay,
use it based on whether it's your home game or away game.
okay,
I think the only exception for Essendon is at Marvel Stadium, where a part of our agreement is whether it's our home game or our away game, we use the same rooms. What are the home team's rooms in every
okay,
game? So at
okay,
least there it's quite familiar.
okay,
Yeah, I think probably that is the challenge, isn't it? We played Geelong at the MCG earlier in the year, or might be Marvel. I'm not sure, but that's it is the MCG. That the MCG is obviously a ground that the Cats get to play at 5 or 6 times a year, if not more. Whereas we only get not that we'd want to play there more, but only the one opportunity to play at Kardinia Park. So it is a real advantage that I guess the other Victorian teams don't have. But I think most of the commentary from non-Geelong fans is just a sign of a bit of jealousy and envy there rather than anything else.
and a lot of these clubs used to have their own home ground. Again, that's from back before I was following the game. But I mean, a lot. I look at the list of all these different parks that that clubs played at. That they all had their own home ground until everything kind of went to either the MCG or to Docklands when they built that stadium then.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, Docklands effectively replaced Waverley Park, where Hawthorn now has their training base, or at least
Right,
I
right.
think they're moving in the next year or two. But yeah, I think you probably only need to look at a map of Melbourne really to see how close all of the traditional clubs were together.
Right,
Collingwood,
right.
Fitzroy, Carlton, Essendon, North Melbourne, Melbourne, Richmond. You can almost throw a blanket over those suburbs. So yeah, maintaining that infrastructure in Melbourne,
Yeah.
commercially didn't make
And
a
yeah, and
lot of sense.
real estate as it gets more expensive, it's gonna creep in, and that stadium's gonna go, and this one's gonna go, and yeah. I mean, it
Yeah.
makes sense that's what the case is. Yeah. Um, so last question before we jump into a little bit of Essendon trivia for you there.
Okay.
The season ends. Mark Robinson's no longer at the Herald Sun, but what does the headline in the paper say about Essendon's 2025 fixture, no matter what round it happens to end after? If it's after round 24, an elimination final, a prelim, the grand final, what does the headline say about the club for this season?
I think the headline will be something along the lines of humble pie for the experts. I think we'll prove some doubters wrong this year and go on to have a good season. I think most reviews I've seen have Essendon in towards the bottom four. I think we're going to be better than that, and whether that means we finish in the bottom half of the eight or just outside, I'm not sure, but
Hmm.
I think it'll be better than what most of the experts are predicting.
Okay, okay, that's not bad. I like that. I've had I've made one bold prediction for this year that I've gotten a lot of strange looks for, but I'm and I've said it on other ones. I thought that this year's Hawthorn might just be North Melbourne, but I'm probably going to be. I've probably doomed them to failure, but I
I,
don't know.
I I get the comparison. I can see them getting on a roll.
Yeah,
Young team, lots of confidence, exciting players. If they get a win or two, then they could definitely get on a roll. I don't know whether they are mature enough yet to get all the
right.
way that Hawthorn did last year. But yeah, I can definitely see the comparison.
Yeah. So, got a few trivia questions for you about your Bombers before we wrap up here today, and we talk a little bit about your show as well. So, these two players both averaged 28 disposals per game last year for the club.
Nick Merritt, sorry, well, Nick Martin and Zach Merritt.
There you go. Yeah. Yeah, exactly. Or Merritt Martin and Nick Zach. Yeah, either one of them.
There
Yeah.
you go.
Would be.
Either way,
Yep.
combine the two in one.
There you go. Who averaged 5 3/4 one percenters to lead the club last year?
Sam Durham or Will Setterfield?
Ben Mackay.
No.
Yeah.
There you go.
Yep. Ben
Okay.
Mackay did. Yeah. Yep.
There you go.
Now, these three players all averaged 400 or more meters gained per game last year.
Yeah, I have to admit I was actually looking at this one the other day, so I should get this right. So the two I mentioned earlier, Merritt and
Uh-huh.
Martin,
Yep.
and then it was a couple of defenders, Ridley and Redmond.
Redmond's the other one. Yep. 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 And who had there were two players that had more than 100 tackles for the club last year.
Oh, that's not one that I do look a lot at. Uh, it's got to be two of Merritt, Durham, and Caldwell, I would imagine. I'm going to go
Yep.
Merritt
Drop
and
drop
Durham.
Durham. Drop Durham and go with Caldwell. And you got it.
Okay, there
Yep.
you go.
Good
There
job.
you
Good
go.
job. Yep. Okay. Now, who won more games as senior coach for Essendon? James Hurd or John Worsford?
Ooh, I'm trying to think the years that they were there. Was it Worsfold?
He did.
Just?
Yeah, he did. 45 wins, 61 losses, and Hurd had 41 wins and 43 losses.
There
Yep.
you go. That might surprise a few of the staunch Bring Back Herd campaigners.
Well, And again, I wasn't following the club then. Is the list stronger now than it was then when he was there?
No, it wasn't. We had the makings of a really good list at that time.
Okay.
But yeah, obviously you're across what happened from there,
Oh,
and the
yes,
list
yeah.
was
Yep.
gutted, and yeah, it was a tough period for all involved. So yeah, yeah, we might leave that one there.
Yeah, that no problem. Yeah, I wasn't going to explore that. I wasn't delving into that at all.
No, no,
I,
all good.
I already poked the bear enough by my opening comment that I did not go into any further than that, which I'm still. I'm going to say what the comment was. So, um, now, has the club won more games in their history at the GABA or the SCG?
Ooh, we must have played more games at the SCG, so
You have.
I'm going to say the SCG.
That's correct. 11 wins, 22 losses, and at the GABA, 9 wins and 16 losses. Yep.
But there you go. I thought our
Yeah.
record at the SCG might have been a little bit better, only because the Swans were pretty bad for a fair period of time in the 80s there. But there you go.
Okay. Two more for you here. Two more. Which, this is a two-parter here, but which Melbourne-based club have the Bombers defeated the most times in their history, and which one have they defeated the fewest number of times in their history?
Melbourne, so most and fewest.
Yes.
So most would be St Kilda, I would say.
I think most teams can say St.
Yeah,
Kilda for that for that question, unfortunately.
yeah, I would expect so. And then fewest, Collingwood, I'm guessing,
Nope.
or Carlton.
The Bulldogs.
The Bulldogs. Okay. Oh
Yeah.
well, I guess they came in a bit later, didn't they? So
Yeah.
they joined the
96
club in
wins,
25.
96
Yeah.
wins, 69 losses. Yep. And
Okay.
you got 145 wins and 72 losses against St. Kilda. So about a 2-to-1 ratio there for you.
Not a bad record.
Yeah. Now this number to me was absolutely staggering here. I was shocked by this number when I read it. Which player led the club with 99.3% time on ground last year? That number stunned me. 99.3%.
Uh, Ben Mackay.
Yeah, it is. Yeah. I
I think
just
he only went off the ground twice for the season, and obviously very briefly.
Yeah, I mean that I mean I've seen most of the and I always ask that question, but it's usually about 94, 96, but 99 point it's like he didn't come off at all.
Yeah.
Yeah, which
Yeah.
makes how did he how was he able then to actually, disappear and go play on the forward line for Carlton? Because did we because if I'm not did they actually end up playing in the same game against one another last year? Because I know for years it's something has always happened where the two of them did not end up facing off against each other.
Yeah, they did. They did. It was
Yeah.
the King's birthday Eve match at the G. They played against each other for the first time.
They go out and introduce each other. Hey, yeah, I'm Haley, I'm Ben.
Yeah.
Hey, you look familiar.
Yeah. Yeah, I'm sure their parents probably appreciated them not playing against each other. I reckon that'd make you pretty nervous as a
Yeah,
mum and dad, wouldn't it?
that's true. I remember that there was a college football game here a few years ago where there was a young lady who her brother like for the national championship game, her brother played on one team and her fiance played on the other team. So so somebody had basically taken their two
Oof.
jerseys and like cut them in half and sewn them together into one jersey. So she had like half of each jersey on. So
There was that happened here with Fremantle Hawthorn in the grand final. Brad Hill and what's his brother's name who played for Fremantle escapes me, but their younger brother or cousin
okay,
was in the crowd with a jumper that was half and half.
cut
So
half and
yeah,
half. Okay, so for those folks who haven't yet discovered, and I don't know why you haven't yet, your show Don the Stat, and you even got the statistics emphasis right there in the name of your podcast. Tell us a little bit about it. Are you back up with new episodes already for this year, and where can people find it?
yeah. So in terms of finding it, probably the easiest way is just our website, donthestat.com, but we're on all of the podcast channels. So wherever you get your podcasts, you'll be able to find us. Yeah, we're back. We actually haven't really gone anywhere. My co-host Ian came up with the idea to do a countdown, 100-day countdown.
Hmm.
to opening round, and we've been doing that throughout the off season, counting down our top 100 Essendon players since 1980. So there's a sort of a 5 or 6 minute daily podcast coming out about the feature player of the day, which has been
Okay.
lots of fun. And yeah, I think we're 2 weeks back into our usual sort of programming as
Okay.
well, going into the season and all things. And yeah, we're my background is as a former football analyst at Essendon many years ago. So yeah, we do take a bit of a deep dive into stats and game plan and analysis as part of what we do. So yeah, ramping up for big season to come. First practice match this week on Saturday. So looking forward to pulling that apart.
And if they want to follow you on, do you have links for your like your X and Facebook and that sort of thing up on your website if they want to give you a follow there as well?
Yeah, you can find them all there. We're Don the Stat on Facebook. Where I'm Jonathan J Walsh on Twitter or X and Blue
Okay.
Sky. And my co-host Ian is Kiptastic1.
Okay.
But there again, you can find those links on our website as well. I think that's about everywhere we're at the moment. We haven't ventured into TikTok or
Yeah.
Instagram.
Okay. Yeah, I'm not on TikTok. I'm not on TikTok either. I feel that, the Chinese government's reading enough of our information as it is without me having to make it even easier for them. But
I'm not sure that the Chinese government are too interested in Essendon, but yeah,
well, Port
we just
Adelaide
haven't
they
set
would
that
have
up
been.
yet.
What was it? Port Adelaide and Gold
That's
Coast
true.
kept going up there, to
Yeah,
well,
Melbourne, I
yeah.
think as well.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, well, Jonathan, this has been a lot of fun. I think that you have a very unique club this year because they have the talent to make a significant jump up the ladder. Um, whether they are able to put that all together or not certainly remains to be seen, but it's going to be a lot of fun to watch them this year because you've got a lot of youngsters that you're hoping you're going to develop and become integral parts of this club going forward for the next several years, and hopefully, if Sam Draper decides, yeah, I would like to stay, donning the sash, um, that that he's, able to, sign a contract during the season. But if he chooses not to, hopefully he has a phenomenal year and you're able to extract just a little bit more from one of those clubs out west should he decide to head back to the West Coast.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, look, I think you've summed it up well. I think we're going to play a bit more of an entertaining brand of football this year than we did last year, and yeah, that should make for an enjoyable year. And if these kids can get some games and improve, then yeah, who knows what we're capable of yet? I think but I do think people have probably written us off a little bit too quickly. So yeah, I'm cautiously optimistic about what
That's
2025 is going to deliver.
that's that is a really good way to look at it. That's being confident and having some humility at the same time.
There you go. Story
Because,
of the day.
yeah. So, all right. Well, Jonathan, I truly, truly appreciate you taking time out of your day, and this was an awful lot of fun. And I hope your club has a very successful season for 21 out of the 23 games they play this year.
No, thank you, Craig. It's always a pleasure, and yeah, huge props for you doing what you do. It's always a lot of fun, and yeah,
Appreciate it.
look
Thank
forward to
you.
chatting again soon.
Thanks. Cheers. You bet.
Cheers, Craig.
Thanks. You bet. Bye bye. All right, Jonathan, thanks so much for sitting down to chat with me. I appreciate your discussion off the air as well. It was some great insight. I do look forward to getting you back on the podcast as well to delve a little bit further into your previous job with the club. I'm really looking forward to that. Now, folks, again, as I'd mentioned at the outset, remember you can find everything about the podcast over at my website, ayankonthefooty.com. I hope you'll get subscribed. I hope you'll share the podcast with your friends and family as well. It's a huge help. I can't go door to door around Australia and knock on doors and ask people to check out the podcast. So if you like it, it'd be a huge help if you could tell your friends about it. Leave a review. Gives me some legitimacy with possibly some skeptical footy fans that are wondering who's this American that's talking about our game. So it'd be a huge help, folks. Okay. And ladies and gentlemen, if you want to reach out, you can also do that by email at ayankonthefooty@gmail.com. Please look out for one another. Okay. If you need to talk to somebody, please reach out and talk to somebody. I'm struggling with this right now myself. I've got, as many of you know, we lost one of our two dogs to cancer yesterday. My wife has also been battling cancer, so it's been a very, very difficult time. Um, this puppy that we lost was 10 years old. He saved my life because he was my walking partner for a large amount of the miles, kilometers, if you will, that I put in to help me lose weight over the last several years. Um, just an absolute sweet, sweet puppy, and I'm going to miss him tremendously. And we're really struggling right now as I'm going through and cleaning up a lot of the things that were his over the last couple of days. Um, Cleaning things, putting things away. Um, I'm never going to forget him, but I'm not sure I necessarily want to have the memories of him out in the open quite so much. Yeah, we will certainly be looking at getting another dog or two. We have a 17-year-old Wheaten Terrier as well. She's like the Energizer Bunny, but it's been a tough time. But if you need to talk to somebody, please reach out and talk to someone. Okay, those numbers are in my show notes every single episode. I'm still trying to make some connections like that with folks around here. I don't want people to, have me think that I'm feeling sorry for myself or anything because everybody's going through tough times. Everybody has difficult times. I know it's the whole you got to buck up that sort of thing, but it's just I don't know, maybe I'm too emotional. I'm not sure. But enough of that. Folks, look out for your friends and family. And as always, may your dribble kick never hit the post. I will catch you later. And this has been episode 373. Again, give me a follow over on my socials. Check out the website. Subscribe to the podcast. And if you enjoy it, please leave a review. And as always, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, cheers and goodbye.